All right, folks, here we are. It is Wednesday, and it's Trustworthy AI. So topics in cybersecurity, Trustworthy AI. It's a subject, one of 2 or 3 subjects that I'm pretty excited about. In AI in general, Trustworthy AI specifically. And you're going to get a full dose, I promise you, and I also promise you that you'll learn a bit, and also you'll have a little fun, I hope, along the way. I'm Jerry, and I'll introduce myself as part of this module here. But this is a course outline, and we'll do a little bit of what I call AI evolution as part of the first chapter of the book that we'll also talk a little bit about. Are you all doing okay? Mm-hmm. How many times a day do you use AI? Ballpark. There's not a right answer or a wrong answer. I use generative AI in some form, like ChatGPT, about a dozen times a day, and rising. It's probably closer to 20 times a day. It's just what I do. Like, I asked it before I came here. I'm about to teach this class at NC State. There's mostly undergrad students. What kind of music do you think they'll want to listen to? And I got an answer. Is it right or wrong? It just deburdened me from having to figure that out. And the answer seemed reasonable. So that's what you heard earlier. But how many times?
10 to 15.
10 to 15. All right. Anyone 25 or more a day? All right. So no hooked on, completely hooked on. You probably are using it about 100 times a day, but probably don't know it. It's probably behind something you're using. Anytime you do a Google search, you're actually using it. So it's out there. It certainly is out there. And for the most part, it's wonderful. It's like scissors. You know, scissors are there. We take it for granted, and they're wonderful. Now, should you run with scissors? No. So there's the right way to use scissors, and there's the wrong way. And that's kind of what we're going to be going throughout this class. But today, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. We'll go over the class strategy, the grading, the learning objectives. We'll look into how I got into AI, and then we'll look at the evolution of AI. No wisecracks about, I was there from the beginning, because I wasn't. Well, maybe. All right, let's start. So, a little something I do for attendance, and we'll go into this through an example. I did the first one for you, but I'd like you to use AI and use one of your times a day for a volunteer in the class to find the random word of the day and then give it to me, and you all will then email me that you were here with that word as part of the subject line. All right, so that's how I track attendance, with an email, with a special word, and that's how we'll do it. The textbook is Think Artificial Intelligence, and we'll chat about that in a second. If you have a chance this week, please look through the first 4 chapters, and I'll get into the rigor that I'm expecting around that, or the lack thereof of rigor, in a second, and we'll talk about that. But the homework today is to catch up, get to chapters 3 and 4, and look at the quiz, take the quiz for chapters 1 and 2. I use Moodle, so there's a Moodle site for this class, and you can take the quizzes there, as well as follow along with the modules, okay? And I don't mind if you take photos of your classmates happy, classmates sleeping, or me happy or sleeping or whatever during class. I collect them. I actually, when I'm at work and I see one of them pop up, it gives me a pause, and I say, okay, this is what it's all worth. This is why I do what I do. So I appreciate a picture from time to time. Don't have to say I'm taking a picture, just take it away. So about me. I was born in New York City in the Bronx, and I like the Mets instead of the Yankees, even though the Yankees are in the Bronx. I was always a curious engineer, taking apart everything, optionally putting it back together, but ever since a little kid. As a little kid, I crawled the hallways of IBM TJ Watson Research Center in Yorktown Heights, New York, which is one of their premier research sites. In my diapers as a little kid, my dad is a physicist. He actually is 88 years old. You may see him visit this class even. He works here at NC State. He's a research professor, and he does cool things in material science. But so I kind of followed in his footsteps, but I was the other kind of science, like in some of his friends at the time would say, not a real science, computer science, and he would pat me on the head like, well, he's cute. It's a cute thing he's doing. It's like, art, computer science. I guess when you're doing physics, that's the way you look at the world. I think that's not quite right. I'll tell you a little bit about wild ducks. I think I'm a wild duck. I suspect there's some in this classroom as well. I'll explain that today. I love inventing. I have a bunch of inventions. I like that. Inventions are like my cookie crumbs. I get to look back and see where I was in time, how I got to where I'm going, and it helps me capture things. I mean, there's lots of ways to capture. You can blog about something. You can post something on social media, or write a book, or but inventions are fun. And my end of semester project, because I do the project with you, is a chatbot that is a chatbot that helps you write patents. So that's my thing that I've been working on. I also love that technology that sits under cryptocurrency, and I like it not so much. And I'm a fool from an investment perspective. I should have invested much earlier because I was in pretty early in the crypto world. But I really love the computer science underneath blockchain, and especially the cryptography, and especially how it has amazing properties that could really help trustworthy computing. And I guess that's really what I enjoy the most, trustworthy computing. I'm focusing it at AI these days. It's what I do at work. Here you are, you're seeing me at NC State. Once in a while, if you go downtown Raleigh, you might see me playing bass guitar in a band. I have golf clubs. I guess I play golf. I'm not very good at it. My wife is very good at it. And I am a husband. I am a dad with 2 kids, and recently a dad with 2 dogs. That's Guinevere the owl. She's not my owl. I just was walking down the street in Scotland once, and someone handed them to me. And I handed them like $20 for letting me handle it. But that's about me. I hope to learn about you. Next week, we're going to do an exercise, like a first of a kind exercise for me. So I do want to get to know your name. So I'm going to have you write your name down, hold it up, and I'm going to take a picture of you. I'll look at it every once in a while to get your names. If you watch, how many of you watched the welcome video? Thank you for doing that, but if you get a chance, it's like a minute long. I used a tool called Synthesa AI to create it, and I did a little training session with it where I went in front of a white wall, and it had me read things and make hand gestures, and it now cloned me. So I have a clone of myself, and I say it in the video, it's not me, it's a clone of me doing this. And I find these very useful. I can see how they can be terrible in some instances, but I like to look at the good. So I used it to create that. I'm going to point out 2 things that I said in there and just emphasize them. This is a 1-credit class, and it's a pass-fail class, or I guess satisfactory, unsatisfactory, as the university calls it. So the goal here is to be real with that, to say, okay, it's a 1-credit class. I want to strive for a goal to maximize your learning and minimize your stress. This is not going to be a source of stress, because I know you have plenty other sources of stress. So that is the goal. It's not just to be stress-free, it's to have learning with that. And also that we're going to cover a lot of ground. Right? And my goal is 6 months from now to say, yeah, I heard Jerry say that. I'm not quite sure what it means or what it was, but I think I know where to go to look now. So the thing is, I'm going to kind of shoot you through a bird's eye view, high level. Most of the concepts are going to go. I might take on things even in the book that go a little deeper. Just read them and see what happens. Maybe it sticks, maybe it sticks and you just don't know it's somewhere in your neural network. So don't get too put out when you see the amount of content that's going to be there in the book alone. But just know that from a class perspective, objective is to expose you to these terms, to their use. You're going to see that I'm not just interested in the things, the elements of AI. I'm also interested in the people and the roles that create those elements. So we're going to do a lot of persona-based stuff in this class. And, perhaps in your career, you might want to pursue one of these now. This year, they're off the chart salaries for these, like data scientist, data engineer, prompt engineer. These are really good professions to be in. And then you throw the cybersecurity angle at it. You guys are, you got, the gems in your hands right now from a market perspective. You're in the right place at the right time. So the class, let me tell you about the setup of the class. There's two sides. There's the beginning, and then there's what we do in the second half. The beginning is looking at and studying the basic elements, the essential elements of AI. Things like prompt engineering, data curation, machine learning. And also today we'll go over a bit about the history, at least from my perspective of the history. And then once we have some elemental basics, we will then look at how they get applied to building applications that include AI. We'll look at this really cool framework called LangChain, one of my favorite frameworks out there, an open source framework. The whole purpose of this course is the next module, which is around AI ethics and security. And then we're going to, for our end of semester project, build with prompt engineering a trusty chatbot. And we'll go over that. And that will make up this class. So that's the strategy. The structure is we have lectures and we have lab modules. During the labs, we'll look at some code, we'll look at some data sets. We're going to use some tools like a ChatGPT or your favorite equivalent, and things like Jupyter Lab, which is a great way to code Python interactively. And we'll see that in a second. And that's kind of what we'll do. All of the code examples in the book are in GitHub, so you can go there and check those out. It's 20% attendance, 50% quizzes, and 30% project, end of semester project. And that gets all kind of added up, and you get a pass, basically. Let's look optimistically. All right, so just to say, here's the GitHub. Everything from the Python samples to the data sets are all there. And you can, we'll have our chances to play around with them. And of course, here's what I mentioned earlier, what's the random word of the day? And this is really the random word of the day. So it is serendipity. So just email me, hi, I'm here, and as serendipity as your subject line, and you're good to go. There's Jupyter. We're going to use Jupyter Lab, which was all online. And it's really cool. I mean, you can look at data sets. You can look at the Python code, you can, plot things right there in your notebook. Have any of you used anything like Jupyter before? Jupyter, yeah, it's like the gold standard. Of course, I didn't use it when I created the book, but that's my problem. I explain why in the book. So I think I just mentioned this. The grading is attendance, Sen, GQuomo, NCSU EDU, and the weekly code, which is serendipity. There's quizzes. Homework this week is to take quiz 1 and 2. There are 5 questions, most of them multiple choices, 1 true and false. Come on, folks. I mean, use AI? I don't know. If you can't, it should be, pretty straightforward. There's a method to the madness, here, and that's the grading scale. I think 70 and above is satisfactory. All right. So the learning objectives. We'll quickly go through, but the modules align with these pretty well. AI assistance, it's a firm belief that AI is here to partner with us, like so many good technologies. Will AI take over the world? Maybe. Probably not in my lifetime. Maybe in your lifetime. I don't know. But really understand how AI is your sidekick, how AI helps you do the day-to-day and frees your brain up to work on the bigger problems, to kind of de-burden yourself with some of the more mundane work, the work that you probably won't brag about on your resume, the work that you probably won't post something on social media about. No, you're going to be able to make that post awesome because AI is going to de-burden you from those other things, so you have more time to spend on those things that are important, or that you love, or that are important and you love. Even better. Prudence, we'll talk about that in a second. AI fundamentals, we'll get a little of that today. Efficient prompt engineering, the ability to carefully craft prompts is a big deal. It's the way you speak to large language models or to any generative model. Right? So learning how to write that perfect prompt is what we'll study in a particular module, but it'll come out throughout. And you guys know this. I mean, at some level, when you first started Google searching, what you typed in there probably wasn't, but now you know exactly what to do, right, to get to that information that's important to you, the way you want it. So we'll learn a little bit about the science behind that. Data curation. I'll say this 100 times, garbage in, garbage out. AI will never be as good as the data that was put into it to train it. Machine learning, and this is where things really get interesting. We'll talk about that just a little today, but we have a whole module on it. Developing AI applications, really putting this technology into play. AI and cybersecurity, looking at how to get the best out of AI while mitigating the risks in using it, and then putting that all together in the semester and getting your own trusty chatbot. All right? All good? That is that. That's the book, Think AI, and it is a student's guide to AI building blocks. And folks I work with, any curious student, doesn't mean you have to be sitting at NC State. I have folks back at IBM are saying, Jerry, could I, take chapter 3 and share it with my department? I'm like, okay, I'm probably not going to sue you for copyright infringements. Go ahead, take it. But it's for anyone who's looking to really look at the essential building blocks and the roles, the personalities. On the back of the book, I have an inscription that AI isn't magic, it's just software. And like when I watch the news or something and I hear AI did this or AI did that, I'm like, oh, it's just software. It's amazing software. Don't want to take anything away from it. But I think once you demystify the magic, once you understand the basic why people think it's magic, I think now you're the orchestra leader. You can now start to make music. And I think that's the important thing. It is just software, but it needs an orchestra leader. And I think just up here, it had to come from someplace. People is typically the answer there, right? So really putting it in its place in a good way to say, hey, it's software, I got this. I know what this does. I know why that just did it wrong. Or I know why that just did it in an amazing way. All right, and as I said, software doesn't just come to being by itself. It needs us, people. So there are roles across the life cycle of an AI project. There's different disciplines. So we're going to really look at those roles. So what I did was I learned something. I've been working for IBM. If you include my internship, I hate to say this because people are going to look at me and say, oh, for God's sakes, this guy's a dinosaur. But so sometimes it's incriminating to state how long you've been doing something. But I started with IBM 40 years ago as an intern. I've been 37 years as a full-time employee. And I've learned a few things, and I've made a whole bunch of mistakes, and I learn from those mistakes, et cetera, et cetera. But it's all about people. Like when someone is retiring, they rarely talk about at their retirement speech, and I've been going to a few of these of late. They rarely talk about the thing they worked on. They always talk about the people they worked with. And I don't put people up to this. They just do it. It's just, you remember the people. So I figured maybe in the book, and I also know that if you hear, like think about, teachers or parents or whatever, sometimes when you hear the same voice, I call it voice discounting. You ever walk in a room or you say something, hey, I have an idea. And everyone goes, and then someone else comes in the room and they say, hey, I got an idea. And they say it, and they're like, oh, that was awesome. I call that voice discounting. Somehow your voice was discounted. So in order to spread the word around, I've invited people to tell the story in the book with me. So, and some of them are real, like my friend Rushir, my friend Don, Brian, Iniko. They're all real people. I'm pretty sure I'm real. But I also I made up some people because I think some of my colleagues maybe didn't want me to say everything about them. So I made up Jane and Miguel and Ernestine. And then, I don't know, something happened where then the technology decided, what do you humans know about how AI works? Shouldn't AI explain how AI works? Shouldn't a poor heap of data explain why data curation is really important? So I played around with just some creative writing style to have the book also be told by other characters. So you're going to see that as we go through. You're with me? All right. So with that, those characters align perfectly, by design, with the modules of this class. So we have the 7 modules here, including the 7th is the project. So let's quickly go through high level on each of the modules. So AI evolution, we'll do that today, and then AI lingo and stories. There's AI stories part 1 and AI stories part 2. I think Rushir and Brian tell part 1 of AI stories, and that is AI for code. So how do we teach AI to code? Which is a pretty cool story, and Rushir is about the best at doing that. And Brian, if you ever go to McDonald's and you place an order in the drive-thru and it's not a person, it's an AI taking your order. Maybe not around here, but in California they have it. That's all Brian's work. And then you'll hear from Don and Iniko. Don is responsible for something called the Mayflower Project. And the Mayflower took a ship, and it sailed it autonomously from Plymouth, the UK, to Plymouth, US. And he'll tell the tale about how he got, and it's funny because that's a tale mostly of marine regulation. And he asked me in the book, he asked me in the book, Jerry, have you ever talked to a marine regulator? I'm like, I can't say I have, no. He goes, well, they can't read code and they don't understand AI. And you have to be able to explain why, not just that the boat did the right move, but why it did the right move. And if it's somewhere in a neural network, how the heck do you, so he has some tough problems when it comes to regulation. And Iniko, a great friend, she is a master at building chatbots, support chatbots. So if you go to CVS or Kroger or any of 100 places, and you're dealing with their new chatbot, chances are Lingo help do that. And then Jane, Miguel, and Ernestine. Jane is a data engineer, Miguel is a data scientist, and Ernestine is a prompt engineer. So you'll hear from them in those chapters, the AI Lingo chapter and the AI Stories chapter, and we'll do the AI Evolution. Prompt engineering, you'll hear from Pato, and you can, if anyone knows Spanish, what that word means. And Pato was a environmental sustainability large language model that Jane, Miguel, and Ernestine created. And Pato tells you how it feels from the inside when a human is prompting it. And it's a fun way to describe what happens when your prompt enters into ChatGPT. What does it do with it? And based on that, how can you better interact with language models? Who better to learn from the language model itself? Data curation, I mentioned Dados. Dados is a data pile, and Dados was finally curated. Dados had like anxiety issues because he didn't like messy things, and it was a messy data pile, but Jane came along and straightened them out, got them all cleaned up using, it's amazing, and we'll see this at the very end of this lecture. One of my favorite tools of the trade these days is AI to write code, AI to take, I cut and paste the column headers from a CSV file, like a spreadsheet, and I'll say, okay, here's the structure of my data. Now write a program that does this. And that used to take me a week to do. Now it's boom, it's happening right there. Again, some people say, well, you're cheating. I was like, no, I have something else I want to get done. This is just one of the things I have to do in the way. So it's interesting to see how you can use AI, and I have a quote at the end about that, about how important it is to use the tool to help promote the tool. All right, we'll get into machine learning, and we'll hear from Tess, who is a transformer AI, and not the robot in disguise type, but a different type of transformer, or AI transformer. And we'll build some apps, and we'll get some advice from Archie, who is an abstraction. And people who are building apps with frameworks, they love abstractions. We'll hear from Xander, she's an exploit. And she called her friends to help me write the chapter on cybersecurity. And who better to hack, to kind of ward off the hackers than hackers themselves. Right, so we got Xander coming in for that. So you get the point. I like to play with it, but there's some serious stuff in there. So without further ado, we've got 15 minutes. Let me do two things. Let me tell you a little bit about my AI story, and then go into the real AI story. Just give you some highlights. And again, this checks off. The AI assistance and prudence, those things are going to be in every module. So they're always checked. But we'll go through each of these as we go through the 7 modules. You with me so far? Kind of makes sense? Kind of excited a little bit about the class to come? As you can tell, I'm excited about it. All right, wild duck. What the heck is this obsession? And for the folks that were in my blockchain class, I don't think I ever shared this exactly with you on the duck side. Why? So that's me typing in the prompt on this MacBook to get this picture. Is that me? I don't know. It got the glasses right. It got the goatee right. Okay. So there's this guy, T.J. Watson Jr. And T.J. Watson is the founder of International Business Machines back in like 1920s or something like that. And he was interviewed from the New York Times, and he said, I talk a lot around here about wild ducks. And people kid me a good deal about my wild ducks. But it takes a few wild ducks to make any business go. Because if you don't have those fellas with the new ideas, willing to buck managerial trends and shock them into doing something new and better, if you don't have those kind of people, then business pretty much slows down. Right? So I was always inspired by those words. And I'm something at IBM called an IBM Fellow. And since like the start of IBM, there was about 100 and change of us, a couple hundred of us that have been put to this level. And we adopt wild ducks as our theme. And because of this statement. And it's folks that are not afraid, to say, hey, you got something kind of hanging down your nose, you may want to wipe it. You say something that may not be popular, but after you say it, people are like, no one wanted to say that, but I'm glad you said it. Right? And I don't know, for me, I was kind of wired that way from beginning with. It can take you two ways. So you can get you kicked out or it can get you more trusted. But I think, this notion of trustworthiness is to find the proper way to speak your mind. And I think that's why I admire wild ducks. Because to me, they represent, freedom of thought, but respectful freedom of thought. So anyway, a little bit about where they came from. So as a wild duck, one of the things, coding has been a big part of my life since that was me. And I can remember the day my dad, and those are my parents, at least those how probably back then, how I imagined my parents were. And my dad walked in with my first computer. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was in a couple of big boxes, and that was it for me. Coding, as I say, I cut my teeth on this language called BASIC. I don't know if any of you have heard of BASIC, but it's where I started. And I'd be there in my living room, typing away, turning code into commands, and watching my ideas come to life on the screen. So it wasn't just coding for me. It was like opening a dialogue with a new friend who spoke a language of code and pixels. Right? So kind of that's how I got started with my first PC. And that was probably step one on my road to AI. And then I ran into this thing called logic, if then. It was powerful thought. And it was another big step to AI. And I love the thought of robots and robotics. And one of the first books that I used as a programming guide was something called Carl the Robot. And it's ancient. It probably doesn't exist in any form anymore. But it was, you kind of move this cursor around a board. And it's like you're moving a robot around the board. And you have to program it. And I just remember the first form of intelligence that I thought a program was starting to display, or something I was creating started to display, when this is kind of what that Carl the Robot program looked like. But the if, then, else thing always blew me away, that I'm actually making a decision here. It's an intelligent decision. In this case, it was, turn right is 3 turn lefts. And check and turn is, if right is clear, then turn right. If front is clear, then move, else turn left. And to me, that was like intelligence. I was seeing something make a decision. So again, that was building up. Then I remember when I was about 18 years old, I wrote a game. And the notion of a rule set, building rules. And now it wasn't discrete if then else's. It was, I'm putting a system into play, and now the rules are guiding the system. So that was pretty cool, right, when I started realizing that. And I don't remember that game at all. I don't have to code, but it might have looked like this, the rule set. And if a player enters a room, how do you characterize that? If the player has a good reputation, then you may want to help the player and guide the player. If it has a bad reputation, you may want to remind them of the past. You may want to give them a chance to apologize, et cetera. So you start to put these general rules in place, and now the system starts to take on a life of its own. I mean, that sort of was cool. And then automation. I probably spent 10 years at IBM doing intelligent, and in some cases, AI-based automation. And to me, it doesn't get any better than the car I have. I have a Tesla Model 3. I called it Chumley. And when the car changes lanes by itself, wow. Like, oh my gosh, like my car just changed lanes by itself. But it's just software. It's just software. And it works on this pattern that is very stereotypical in control systems or in automation systems. And there's all different ways to describe these four verbs, but I call them discover, which in the Tesla's case, it uses radar, it uses cameras, IoT devices, and then it uses AI to make a decision. Is that car too close to me? Is there a car on my left? And then it decides to actually automate an action, right? And then uses machine learning to look at that and past history to make those decisions. And to me, putting those things together, it just doesn't get better. I didn't work on the Tesla. I worked on, I would say, more boring things inside data centers to automate, deployment of code and reading of email complaints from MetLife and things like that. But it follows a very similar pattern of automation and learning. But where did AI start? Is something that I was pretty fascinated to learn about. And being a big movie buff, Clash of the Titans was one of my favorite movies growing up. It was remade, I think, in the 90s. But to hear that the notion of AI or intelligent machines dated way back to Homer's time and the ancient Greece, where Homer and his character Phidias, he would be looking at doing things like automating a bellows, in a kiln type of setting, golden assistants that made decisions. And in the Odyssey, Homer describes intuitive ships that respond to commands and avoid obstacles. I mean, these are early examples of AI. I can't imagine much earlier than that. So that's pretty impressive when you think back and say, wow, folks were almost always thinking about technology like that. You'll see this a lot in the book. Every picture in the book, I use AI to generate Dolly 2, Dolly 3 to generate. The funny thing about, even to this day, when AI generates a picture, and I don't quite understand this, it's probably a graduate level class. People who build large language models and large neural networks, they don't, but just like we don't know how exactly our brain works, people who build networks or build these image models don't know why it does some of the things it does. But one thing it doesn't do particularly well is spell. Kind of starts describing, yes, the picture is right, but it almost inevitably, when it tries, so there's a lot of gibberish, but plausible gibberish, which is interesting. It's completely wrong, but it's not, you can see maybe what it was trying to say. So I had to plot out the history of AI at one point. So let me just run through in the couple minutes we have left. John McCarthy is a really big name. And in the 50s, he coined the term AI. And I think John is a brilliant man, and history remembers him well for that reason. He may have screwed up just a little bit. I mean, he pushed by calling it artificial intelligence. In the room, if you read the transcripts, they were debating as to whether to call it complex computing systems. Now, I'm kind of glad they didn't call it that either. But by calling it artificial intelligence, I think they set the bar very high. Now, the expectation that this thing was smart. And, out of the gates in the 50s, it started getting its criticism right up front. But there was this Dartmouth College conference where John coined the term artificial intelligence. And I know what you're thinking. No, I was not there. I wasn't born yet. not for a while. All right. I remember using this system, but not in 1964. But MIT built ELIZA, and Joseph Weizenbaum really took on some of the very earliest forms of natural language processing, which are precursors things like ChatGPT today. And it uses matching and scripted responses to simulate conversation and offer an illusion of understanding. And I think you're going to find that even in ChatGPT. It is offering you, in many cases, an illusion of being smart. And we'll talk about just how smart it is. But I think ELIZA started doing that. Then the notion of an expert or rules-based system. Remember I told you about my game. You set a bunch of rules, and you put them in play on a system, and then the rules just guide the system in place. And this was put for medical diagnosis, looking at bacteria and suggesting antibiotics. It was a big deal back in 1982. There was a winter. There was a long period of time where AI went quiet. And there were some challenges that, and I think computing had to catch up to it as well. And it really wasn't until, the 90s that it started kicking in again. And, my hometown, IBM, started doing things like putting it to the test through games. And chess was one of the games. And, AI played checkers before this. But this slightly more complex game, and even more complex in real time to beat the reigning champ. And, Deep Blue did that in 1997. And then kind of on my watch, I wasn't part of the Watson team, but a lot of my friends like Rushir were. And it was really cool in 2011 to watch on TV Watson play Jeopardy and beat Ken Jennings, who was their reigning champ at the time. All right. And now, for good or for bad, AI started really getting on people's radar. And I think also expectations. Watson version 1 did not succeed. I don't want to say it was a failure, but it didn't meet the expectations of the business. And part of that is the business had way, way too high expectations. It was going to cure cancer by, 2021. Oh, that passed. Didn't do it. All right. So again, thank you, John McCarthy, for setting the expectations, and we all take the bait on it. Of course, 2014, Tesla, autopilot, and Elon Musk's vision of fully autonomous vehicles. And again, both bad and good come out of this, and we'll talk about this over the class. All right, wrapping it up here. There was the Netscape moment, which was ChatGPT. What Netscape is to the internet, ChatGPT is to AI. Now, the internet was around way before Netscape web browser came out. But what the Netscape web browser is, the internet was pretty complicated and just for computer scientists at the time. But when Netscape came out, it democratized it and made it accessible to everyone. And that's what ChatGPT did. AI was around for a very long time, as we just saw. But it's really now booming because of ChatGPT making it accessible. We'll study that a lot going forward. So defining AI. Now, there are many subfields of AI that machine learning, deep learning, robotics, rules-based system, computer speech, many pieces. If you ask AI to form a converged definition based on the work of John McCarthy and other famous computer scientists, Alan Turing and Stuart Russell. It will say artificial intelligence is a multidisciplinary field that encompasses science, engineering, and philosophy of creating intelligent machines and computer programs capable of human-like and rational thinking and decision-making, human-like. And we'll talk about rules-based and machine learning. A lot of people say rules-based is the old type. I say, yes, that's true, but there's a place for rules-based, and converging the two make a lot of sense. ChatGPT is like having Einstein on your shoulder, kind of as your sidekick. Einstein, it was said that his IQ, and they based the IQ test around Einstein's intelligence, was 160. ChatGPT version 4 hit 155. It passed the bar exam, it passed many major exams, so it's not far off from that. But I feel that we're better together. So I asked it and kind of passed parts of my book into ChatGPT and said, can you come up with a new definition, but sneak in my view to it? So it's everything that they said, but ethically guide decision-making, not just decision-making, but ethically guided decision-making in collaboration with human ingenuity, right? So it's the notion, I believe, that AI and people are better together than by themselves, right? I'll leave you with this last note. My friend said to me, Jerry, I was at data science before AI was cool. And now that it's cool, I'm no longer needed. Well, one of the things that you'll see in this chapter of the book is the power at your fingertips. Now, I think she was exaggerating. I think we still need her. She's an amazing scientist. But I get her point that with AI now, you can deburden yourself. So I asked it to generate the simplest Python program to illustrate deep learning in action. And this is pseudocode, but it generated a 50-line Python script that I was able to run, and it does handwriting recognition, right? So we're going to learn how to respect and harness this power. And it's software, so we will demystify it, and we're going to have some fun along the way. So if you can, email me your word of the day, serendipity. Get your hands on the book. It's available, on Amazon, and as both a printed book and as an ebook. Read and scan through chapters 3 and 4. Take quiz 1 and 2. And thank you. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your week.